I'm going to read chapter 9, in which the Lord Sea and the Indian Ocean proved propitious to the designs of the Phyllis Bowl. Okay, so before reading chapter 9, we'll talk about chapter 8. Pete, the detective from London, who suspect Mr. Phileas Fogg was a robber, bank robber, and then accompanied Courtwater, who wanted to buy clothes. They went shopping, and Fix asked Courtwater several questions on Mr. Phileas Fogg, how they started traveling, and Courtwater talk about evening when Mr. Phileas Fogg had told him to travel around the world in 8 days. It's quite interesting story. And reviewing is to remember the story by reviewing or writing, and then I can remember the story well and make it specific. That's a good way to read the books. Okay, here we go. I'm going to read chapter 9 with the narrator.
Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne, translated by George Makepeace Towle. Chapter 9, in which the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean prove the designs of Phileas Fogg. The distance between Suez and Aden is precisely 1,310 miles, and the regulations of the company allow the steamers 138 hours in which to traverse it.
The Mongolia, thanks to vigorous exertion of the engineers, seems likely to lap toward her speed to reach her destination considerably in that time.
Part of the passengers from Brindisi were bound for India, some for Bombay, others for Calcutta by way of Bombay, the nearest route thither now that a railway crosses the Indian peninsula.
Among the passengers was a number of officers, military officers of the various grades, leisure, and being either attached to the regular British post of commanding the Savoy troops.
Government has assumed the powers of the East India Company, where the sub-lieutenants get 280 pounds, brigadiers 2,400 pounds, and generals of divisions 4,000 pounds.
What with the military men, a number of the rich young Englishmen on their travel, and the hospitals, the efforts of the British at this time passed quickly on the Mongolia.
The best of fare was spread upon the cabin tables at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the 8 o'clock supper, and the ladies scrupulously changed their toilets twice a day, and the hours were whirled away when the sea was cleansed.
The show was tranquil with music, dancing, and games, but the lot is full of the catfish, and often the boisterous like most lone and narrow birds.
When the wind came from the African or Asian coast, the Mongolia with her long hull rolled fearfully.
And then the ladies speedily disappeared below the pianos, while silent singing and dance ceased.
Yet the good ship plowed straight on, unretarded by wind or wave, towards the straits of Bab el-Mandeb. What was Phileas Fogg doing all this time?
It might be thought that, in his anxiety, he would be constantly watching the changes of the wind, the disorderly racing of the billows, every chance in short which
Mongolia to slacken her speed, and thus interrupt his journey. But if he thought of these possibilities, he did not betray the fact by any outward sign.
Always the same impassible members of the Reform Club, whom no incident could surprise as unburling as the ship's chronometers, and seldom having the curiosity even go up to
admirable scenes of the Red Sea with cold indifference, did not care to recognize the historic towns and villages which, along its borders, raised their picturesque outlines against the sky.
And betrayed no fear of the dangers of the Arabic coast, which the old historians always spoke of with the horrors, and upon which the ancient navigators never ventured.
Drawed by ample sacrifices, how did this eccentric personage pass his time on the Mongolia? He
mainly for half minutes every day, regardless of the most persistent lowering and the pitchings on the water of the steamer, and he played was indefatigable.
As enthusiastic in the game as himself.
A tax collector on the way to his post at Goa, Decimus Smith returning to his pirates at Bombay, and the brigadier general of English army who was about to join this brigade, the Bernard.
Found played whist by the hour together in absorbing silence. As for Passepartout, he too had escaped seasickness and took his meals conscientiously in the forward cabin.
I rather enjoyed his bride, for he was fat as well others took a great interest in the scenes through which they were passing, console themselves with his.
After swim would end at Bombay. He was
pleased on the day after leaving so as to find and acted on the obliging prison, with whom he had a work and chatted on the.
Said he, approaching this person with his most amiable smile, "You are the gentleman who so kindly volunteered to guide me at Suez." "Ah, I quite recognize you.
You are the servant of a strange Englishman, just so, Monsieur Fix."
"Monsieur Fix," resumed Passepartout, "I'm charmed to find you on board. Where are you bound?" "Like you, to Bombay." "That's capital.
Have you married this trip before? Several times? I'm the agent of the Peninsular Company. Then you know India."
"You know India?" "Why, yes," replied Fix, who spoke consciously. "A curious place, this India." "Oh, very curious."
Mosques, minaret, temple, pagoda, tigers, snakes, elephants, hills, and time to see the sight. Absolutely, Monsieur Fix.
"Monsieur Fix, you see, a man of sound sense ought not to spend his life jumping from a steamer upon a railway train and from a railway train upon a steamer again, pretending to make the tour of the world in 80 days.
All these gymnastics you may be sure to will see at Bombay. Mr. Frog is getting on much. The aft speaks in a most natural tone, which is quite well, and I too."
"Quite well, and I too. I eat like a famished ogre. It's the sea air. But I never see your master on deck. Never. He hasn't the least curiosity."
Do you know, Mr. Passepartout, that this pretended tour in 8 days may conceal some secret errand, perhaps a diplomatic mission?
"Hey, Monsieur Fix, I assure you I know nothing about it, nor would I give half a crown to find out."
After these meetings, Passepartout and Fix got into the habit of chatting together the letters and making point to gain the worthy man's confidence.
He frequently offered him a glass of whiskey or pale ale in the steamer barroom, which Passepartout never failed to accept with graceful alacrity, mentally pronouncing Fix the best of the good fellows.
Meanwhile, the Mongolia was pushing forward laterally on the Philippines, much surrounded by slugs. Walls were up and the trees were growing to the side, and on the mountains beyond was abstract basket field.
Passepartout was ravished to behold this celebrated place, and thought that with its circular walls and dismantled fort it looked like an immense coffee cup and saucer.
And the following night they passed through the Strait of the bound up, so which means in all of it the Bridge of Tears, and the next day they put to Aden Point, northwest of Aden Harbor today in Cove.
This matter of fueling steamers is a serious one at such distances from the coal mines. It costs the Peninsular Company some £800,000 a year.
In these distances, coal is worth 3 or 4 pounds sterling a ton.
The Mongolia had still 1,650 miles to traverse before reaching Bombay, and was obliged to remain 4 hours at steamer point to coal up.
But this delay, as it was foreseen, did not effectively Paul's program to decide the Mongols instead of reaching Aden on the morning of the 15th, when he was due.
On the evening of the 14th, a gain of 15 hours. Mr. Fogg and his servant went ashore at Aden to have the passport again visaed. Fix and Observe followed them.
On the visa procured, Mr. Fogg's returned on board. The leading must have the world passport according to custom. So about among the mixed population of Somalis, Banyans, the place, Jews, Arabs.
Who comprised the 25,000 inhabitants of Aden.
They gazed down with upon the fortifications which make this place the Gibraltar of the Indian Ocean and the vast is
1,000 years after the engineers of Solomon. Very curious, said Passepartout to himself on returning to the steamer.
Analysis, the by no means useless to travel if a man wants to see something new.
At 6 p.m., the Mongolia slowly moved out of the roadstead and was soon once more on the Indian Ocean. She had
168 hours in which to reach Bombay time. She was favourable, the wind being the northwest and all sails aiding the engine.
The steamer rolled but little. The ladies in fresh toilets reappeared on deck, and the singing and dancing were resumed.
The two boardings accomplished most successfully, and the Passepartout was incited to continuous company serving, securing the person of delightful fix.
The delightful fix. On Sunday, October 20th, towards noon, they came in sight of the Indian coast. 2 hours later, the pilot came on board.
A range of hills lay against the sky in the horizon, and soon the rows of palms which adorned Bombay came distinctly into view.
The steamer entered the road formed by the islands in the bay, and at 4:30 she hauled up at the quays in Bombay.
Philip Fogg was in the act of finishing the 33rd elaborate voyage, and fortunate himself to having it by the ball stroke captured Old Sutton.
This flying campaign with a brilliant victory. The Mongolia was due at Bombay on the 22nd. She arrived on the 20th. This was
again Philip Fogg 2 days is the Battle of London, and he calmly entered the itinerary in the Colombo Games.
End of chapter 9.
Okay, after reading chapter 9, I found interesting the journey here was 1872, and then Mr. Phileas Fogg headed for Bombay in India. In Bombay, in 1872, in India, there is a Sepoy against the English army. So, and then, according to the story, and many officers from England, London, and they also boarded to go to India. And on Munich and the Mongolia, the steamship, passed through the Red Sea and Aden Bay. So it was a long ways, almost the west of Saudi Arabia, and between west of Saudi Arabia and Africa, Egypt, Equatorial, Somalia. And then maybe around Somalia or Equatorial, they could see the coffee trees. And I met Arabic friends on Facebook who talked about Arabic coffee, and quite interesting. And also the steamship part and the Aden port to get coal, and the Aden port might poorest at the time. Now, and Somalia is not good. Okay, so I'm going to learn the subway to understand how Mr. Fleas spoke and traveled around the Indian Peninsula from Bombay to Calcutta. Right?